Can creativity be learned? Can music composition be taught? We're going to talk about that, as well as look at my week 12 Thomas Newman-inspired cue on this week's vlog check-in. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft. First, I hope you are doing well. Welcome to my week 12 vlog check-in here at my channel, 52 Cues. I'm writing a cue every single week for the entire year of 2021, often more than one cue. But today I am going to look at This Is the Way, which is a cue that we wrote during last week's patron live stream, and it is a Thomas Newman-inspired cue. And if you want to skip ahead over this week's kind of vloggy bits, then you can check out the timestamp below. I had a pretty good week. Only managed to wrap up 2 cues, well, 2.5. There's another cue that is on deck that I actually hope to finish as soon as I start publishing, or as soon as I set this to render, then I'm going to get to finishing that cue. But this week I had a question come in through the YouTube comments from a user named Superblonde, who says, there is a prominent young YouTube music educator personality who states music composition can't be taught because creativity can't be taught. Only techniques of composition can be taught, not creativity itself. To me, this seems misleading, dangerous, harmful, wrong. What's your opinion? Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. And this is something that I personally struggled with for a long time, actually, the idea of creativity and not feeling like I could be creative enough to have a sustainable career. But in short, I believe that creativity can't necessarily be taught because I believe that human beings are innately creative. On some level, all humans have within them some seed, some type of creativity. I believe some humans are born with a deeper well of creativity, but I think we all of us have a little something. And it starts at a very young age. You pick up some crayons and you start coloring. You make a choice. What color do I want to make this turtle? Do I want to stay inside the lines or color outside the lines? If you're playing in the playground, you start stacking rocks or start drawing with a stick. If you're sitting at a bus stop and you start, drawing with your foot on the ground. You start humming to yourself. You start sensing the patterns in traffic signals. That's all, to me, that's all forms of creativity. And I think human beings are innately born with some form of creativity. Everything else is craft. And I think anybody can learn music composition with enough time, enough tools, and enough teachers. You put the time into it, you dedicate, if this is something you really want, then dedicate yourself and allocate X number of hours per week or whatever. Every day I'm going to write 2 minutes of music, or every day I am going to do this creative thing for X amount of time, and let yourself have time to learn it and to get better at it. Don't expect it to happen overnight, but with enough time, I absolutely think you can learn music composition and increase your creativity. To think that creativity can't be taught, then what are we all doing here? Why are you watching this channel? If you believe that you can't be taught creativity, then what happens during writer's block? I mean, I did a whole episode on writer's block and how to overcome that. So with enough time, you give yourself time to develop it and you dedicate enough time per week, per day, or whatever, however you want to parse it out, that's up to you. And then the tools. If you want to learn to play saxophone, then you got to get a saxophone. If you want to be a composer, a modern composer, you're going to need to get a DAW and a computer. If you want to play piano, then a little cheap keyboard, $99 keyboard. That'll get you started. Put the tools in front of you and start working with them. And then find a teacher. And I don't mean just a physical teacher. If you're watching this video, then and if you're subscribed to the channel and all of that, then on some level you kind of buy into me as a teacher. That's my goal, at least. And I absolutely consider myself as much of a teacher as a composer. It's why I do this. I love teaching, and I believe that this industry is big enough for everybody, and there is enough pie to go around for everybody to have a slice. And so with enough time, the right tools, and good teachers, then I think anybody can learn music composition. And if you can find a teacher, an in-person teacher, or through Zoom, or go to a workshop or something like that, then go for it. But it can absolutely be taught. Absolutely. What can be challenging is when you see others who are born with more, or a deeper well of creativity. I call that the muse, the muse, who seem to have a bottomless muse, and they make it look easy and effortless. That can be sometimes discouraging, because you just, wow, that they made that look easy, and I could never do that. But I don't think you see the time. You don't see them learning the tools or working with the teachers in the background. You don't get to see that. What you get to see is just a performance. So I don't know who this YouTube music educator was. I think that is extremely discouraging. And if I was told that early, then I absolutely would have given up, because I think all humans are born innately creative. All that having been said, I approach music composition myself from an artisan standpoint. And this is something I talk about in my lectures, that I don't consider myself an artist necessarily, because I don't consider what I do to be necessarily making art in the way that a graphic designer designing a business card isn't necessarily art. It's artistic. And when somebody goes to create a logo for a sports team, that's not necessarily art. When an architect makes design decisions inside of the new Target, or they set out to design the building for a Starbucks, is that necessarily art? Or it's commercial application of artistic endeavors, or artistic, I'm not sure kind of the word I'm looking for. But it's a commercial application, and I see production music very much in the same way. I'm much more akin to a graphic designer than I am necessarily an artist. My wife is a musician and also a graphic designer, and she does logos for furniture stores and websites and brands and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, that logo is going to get shrunk down onto a sticker and put on a piece of furniture. That's its usage. The music that I make is ultimately going to sit in the background of a scene on a reality TV show, or a competition show, or a commercial, or something like that. And so I approach it from the artisan, sometimes time to make the donuts kind of a way. And for me, that accomplishes a couple of things. First of all, it demystifies the whole process. and it makes it less heavy. Like, there's not as much weight. Like, when I sit down to write a cue and I'm like, "I'm gonna write a Thomas Newman-inspired cue," then I'm going to lean into the things that make Thomas Newman, and try to create something original. As original as I can, because the client that I'm writing this for, the publisher, wants something that sounds Thomas Newman-y. When somebody sets out to design a logo for a furniture company, it's gotta work for selling furniture. It's gotta help the brand and the identity. So that's the mentality I bring to the table. And when I think about creativity and I think about the sustainability that you have to have in this industry, specifically production music, where you're really looking to pump out at least 52 cues a year. That's what we're doing here. Then if I thought that I couldn't learn how to be creative, then man, that would be soul crushing. And so misleading, dangerous, harmful, and wrong, those are absolutely appropriate terms for that. Now, there are ways to buoy your creativity. It's what we talked about in my previous entry, overcoming writer's block and all of that. And there are ways to buoy your creativity, and some people have a more bottomless well muse of creativity. But I absolutely, undeniably believe that creativity can be learned, or music composition can be learned. And I think we can increase our creativity because I believe all human beings are born innately creative. So thank you so much for the question. I really sincerely appreciate it. So, speaking of Thomas Newman, let's check out the cue for this past week. It is called This Is the Way. We're going to take a listen to it and then break it down on the other side. So this is the way, and a very special thanks to my Patreon patrons, because this was the cue that they helped make possible, made possible through our live stream. So if this is something you're interested in, you can check out the information below if you wanted to see a cue like this get written from scratch. So some key takeaways from the Thomas Newman type of a sound. First of all, the instrumentation is really important. Lots of organic sounds, especially early in his career, he used a ton of marimba, and that's what we have going on here. And so the use of the marimba, it's very closely reminiscent of the American Beauty soundtrack. I feel like he was one of the first to really kind of embrace that sound. And so using thirds and planing harmony, which is another thing that he does a lot of, where you have chords, major chords kind of moving up and down into the key, or major into minor chords, but moving thirds up and down. And so we start off with our marimba melody, then stack it with this bell delay sound, and it becomes a call and response between the bells and the piano. Then we have our first chord change. All right, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself with the harmony. Let's continue into the sounds. I split the marimba into two stems here so that when I export them, I can leave the marimba in the bass stem. We also have some low evolution strings and electric bass. Thomas Newman loves to use electric bass in his orchestrations, and I think that helps to add a nice kind of subby low end with some piano and a bass pad, just kind of washing out the bottom end. We have this delayed bell. This delay sound. And if we look at the percussion, use of tabla and other Indian and ethnic percussion, quote unquote, ethnic, it's very kind of ethnocentric, but ethnic percussion. And so I've got tabla, which is a sample library, and this is the Indian or the India Discovery Series from Complete. And they have some very cool patterns, but I ended up playing my own. So this isn't a pattern, unlike the African High Life cue, which used I recently wrote an African High Life cue that had the djembe ensemble. So played live Doombeck. And I am in 5/4 just to give it that kind of quirkiness. Let me fast forward here to the second part. Shaker. Then with some clicks. That kind of sound. Wrapping up my percussion is a suspended cymbal, as well as a suspended china. .22-inch china from Stag. It's a Stag china. It's like $99 on Amazon. It's really, really nice. Very brashy, gongy type sound. Then a Piatti. This is a Piatti one shot brought in from the East-West. I think Percussion Gold. In an orchestral setting, you definitely want to use Piatti, which are the crash cymbals that you would kind of, clang together, as opposed to a drum set crash. You wouldn't really use that. All right, so that's kind of all of my percussion. I did record some native flute and pitched it way down. One of the things that Newman does a lot in his music is he uses iwi, electronic wind instrument. And if memory serves me from some documentaries I've seen and some behind the scenes, he has a certain player that he uses that brings in, He uses it a lot. One of my favorite usages is in the Passenger soundtrack, which is an amazing film. It's an amazing soundtrack. The film is good. I really like it. There's actually a YouTube video that talks about reordering Passengers, so it's much more of like of a mystery thriller. But the soundtrack is impeccable. One of my favorite Newman soundtracks, and Iwi features prominently in that. Now, I don't play Iwi, and I barely play flute, so I wanted the flute quality to it, and so I played just a couple of flute one-shot type things. And now it's starting to sound a little like Mandalorian. And I have some other kind of breath effects here. All right, and then a couple of string patches, which is a very Newman thing to do. Just moving chords, in this case, the G minor up to the C major. And you have that stacked thirds thing happening, but holding the G on the bottom. Which is imitating what the marimba is doing. And then as the cue progresses and as the energy builds, we're going to bring in some staccato strings, which I've layered with symphobia strings and BBCSO. BBCSO allows me to split by the actual parts of the orchestra. Symphobia is more of an ensemble, and I find that these blend really, really nicely together. And things are building, getting... Now, this falls under the light tension cue category, so harmonically speaking, we're going to hold off or hold out, kind of pedal this G sound. Even though there are harmonic things happening on top of it, we bring in that G to the C sound. We're pedaling the G. That G is pedaled the whole time. And then we get our first chord change. And then it goes back to pedaling. As the energy builds. Now specifically, this cue, the publisher wanted a longer cue. This was written for a golf documentary. So it falls, it's really interesting. It's in between library music, because it's going to live in a library, but it's more bespoke library music written for a specific usage, but not scored to picture. So I can let it breathe a little bit, which is why at 1:40, we're just hitting the breakdown. Usually in a shorter library cue, you would have hit that breakdown a lot earlier. And I'm letting those strings really hammer that 5/4. But my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I have 5/8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1 underneath it. So it's like a 5/4 and a smaller 5/4 and an even smaller 5/4. Bring the melody back. Let the melody go away for a little while here, and then I'm going to make a little edit point. Bum bum. All right, and so as much as possible, I try to add these types of edit points into the cue so that editors can duck out and add an extra little moment of suspense Give them an easy point that they can cut a scene to or edit and add their own tempo and timing into the rhythm of the scene. And then bring everything together here at the end, nice and full. And then end with a solid button, letting it ring out for a while. So this is the way. And I really enjoyed writing that. And I anytime I get to dip into Thomas Newman territory, I absolutely take it. Thomas Newman is one of my heroes. I unapologetically stan Thomas Newman, and just a really huge fan. So that was my week 12. And if you have stuck around this long, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And like I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please, you can let me know below. You can ask questions, comments, whatever. Love to hear from you. And thanks for Super Blonde for this week's vlog title. I can't believe that a teacher thinks that or says that out loud. It's almost like teachers need some sort of Hippocratic oath, saying, I will not actively discourage my students from trying to better themselves. Also, I want to give another shout out to my Patreon patrons for helping keep this channel afloat. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and all of that business. You can join us every Thursday. The patrons join me every Thursday for our music production live stream where I write a cue from scratch. That information is also down below. But that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time. Until then, peace.